Hello, guys. Today we are going to discuss a story that is older than civilization itself. A story that began long before cities, long before writing, long before humans even knew how to shape the world around them. Tonight, we are going to drift gently back through time and explore the history of dogs, from wolves to comfort companions, and how a quiet, unlikely friendship slowly changed the fate of two species forever. Settle in, get comfortable, and let your thoughts soften as we begin a journey that starts more than 30,000 years ago, when the world was colder, darker, and far more silent than it is today. In that ancient time, humans were not masters of the planet. They were small tribes of fragile beings moving carefully through endless wilderness. Ice covered much of the land, forests stretched for hundreds of miles. Strange creatures wandered the plains, and every night carried danger. Humans lived by the rhythm of the sun and the fire. When daylight faded, fear crept in. Beyond the glowing embers of their camps, unseen eyes watched from the darkness, and among those eyes were wolves. Wolves were not yet the gentle animals we know today. They were powerful, cautious, intelligent hunters. They lived in family groups just as humans did. They raised their young, protected their elders, and relied on cooperation to survive. In many ways, they were not so different from the humans they quietly observed from the shadows. At first, humans and wolves were enemies. They hunted the same animals, they competed for the same food, and sometimes they even hunted each other. But nature has a way of finding balance in the most unexpected places. Over time, something unusual began to happen. Some wolves, instead of keeping their distance, began to move a little closer to human camps. Not close enough to be seen clearly, but close enough to smell the smoke of the fires, the warmth of the glowing embers, and the scent of leftover food. When humans finished eating, bones and scraps were left behind. To a hungry wolf, this was a treasure. The bravest wolves crept closer. They learned that human camps were not only places of danger, but also places of opportunity. Food was easier to find here. The fires kept predators away. And humans, though unpredictable, were not always hostile. Night after night, a quiet relationship began to form. The wolves watched, the humans noticed. At first, there was fear on both sides, but fear slowly gave way to curiosity. The wolves that were less aggressive, less fearful, and more patient were the ones that survived near humans. The more violent and reckless wolves were driven away or killed. Over many generations, this gentle selection changed them. Their bodies softened. Their faces became less sharp, their behavior became calmer. These were not fully dogs yet, but they were no longer quite wolves either. They were becoming something new. Humans began to realize that these animals were not just scavengers, they were also protectors. Wolves could hear what humans could not. They could smell danger long before it arrived. When something approached the camp in the dark, these early dogs would growl, stand tall, and alert the humans. This made the nights feel safer. And so humans allowed them to stay. This was the beginning of one of the most powerful partnerships in the history of life on Earth. As thousands of years passed, this relationship grew deeper. The animals that stayed closest to humans were the ones that were friendliest, most loyal, and most willing to cooperate. Humans fed them. In return, the animals guarded them. Together, they survived in a harsh and unforgiving world. Slowly, the wolves became dogs. Their ears changed shape. Their eyes became softer. Their bodies became more suited to living alongside humans rather than hunting alone in the wild. But the most important change was not physical, it was emotional. Dogs began to understand humans. They learned our voices, they learned our moods, they could sense fear, joy, and sadness. And humans, in turn, began to care for them not just as useful animals, but as companions. This bond was not built in a single moment. It was built over countless quiet nights beside the fire, over shared meals, over shared dangers, over shared warmth. And as the world slowly changed, as ice melted and humans began to settle in one place, dogs followed. They moved into villages, they slept near doorways, they watched over children, they helped with hunting and herding, they became part of the family. This was not just the story of how dogs were domesticated. It was the story of how two lonely species found comfort in each other. But this is only the beginning of the journey. Long after those first wolves began sitting quietly at the edges of human firelight, something subtle but extraordinary was unfolding. The relationship between humans and these early dogs was no longer just about survival. It was slowly becoming something deeper, something quieter, and something far more meaningful. Generations passed, and the world continued to change. The ice sheets began to retreat, forests shifted, and animals migrated into new lands. Humans followed, and wherever humans went, these early dogs went with them. At first, they followed from a distance, still cautious, still half-wild. But over time, the distance grew smaller. The animals learned the patterns of human life. They learned when people slept, when they ate, when they traveled, and when they were afraid. They began to understand the rhythm of human existence, almost as if they were learning a second language without words. Humans, too, were learning. They began to notice that these animals were not just tools for protection or hunting. They were individuals. Some were bolder, some were shy, some were playful, some were calm. Humans started to recognize these personalities and form bonds with them. Puppies were allowed closer to the campfires. They were touched, fed, and spoken to. And something ancient and powerful happened in their minds. They began to trust. Trust is not something that appears suddenly. It grows slowly through small moments repeated over and over again. A dog sitting quietly while a human sleeps. A human sharing food with a dog that could have taken it by force. A child laughing as a puppy stumbles and falls. These tiny moments built a bridge between two species that had once feared each other. And as that bridge grew stronger, dogs began to take on new roles. They became the ears of the camp, listening through the night. They became the noses of the group, able to detect animals, enemies, and even changes in the weather. They became the early warning system that kept families alive. When a dog barked, humans listened. Over time, certain dogs became especially valued. The ones that were alert but not aggressive, the ones that were brave but not reckless, the ones that could work with humans instead of against them. These dogs were fed better, protected more, and allowed to breed, and so their traits passed on. Slowly, without humans even realizing it, they were shaping the evolution of dogs. As humans began to hunt in more organized ways, dogs joined them. They chased animals into traps, they tracked wounded prey, they retrieved what humans could not reach. Hunting became more successful and food became more reliable. This allowed human populations to grow. Villages became larger. Life became a little less desperate. Dogs were there for all of it. They slept beside hunters. They shared in the spoils of the hunt. They became partners rather than scavengers. And then something even more remarkable happened. As humans began to build permanent settlements, dogs stayed. They guarded homes. They protected livestock. They watched over children as they played. They became woven into the daily fabric of human life. Where once humans had been surrounded only by the wild, now they were surrounded by something that was both wild and familiar. A friend. Dogs began to understand human emotions in ways no other animal could. They could sense when someone was afraid, when someone was sad, when someone was angry. They responded not with judgment, but with presence. They sat beside grieving humans. They wagged their tails for joyful ones. They offered quiet companionship in moments when words were not needed. This emotional connection may have been just as important as their physical help. In a harsh world, loneliness was dangerous. but with a dog nearby, humans were never truly alone. As centuries passed, dogs began to look more and more different from wolves. Their sizes varied, their coats changed, their behaviors became more diverse. Some were bred to herd animals, some were bred to guard, some were bred simply to be gentle companions. No matter how they looked, the heart of the dog remained the same. It was the heart of a creature that chose to stay. While other animals fled from humans, dogs lined in. While other creatures remained wild, dogs adapted. They learned to live in our world even as we struggled to understand our own. And so, as humanity moved into new lands across deserts, mountains, and oceans, dogs followed. They rode on boats. They walked across frozen plains. They slept beside explorers and farmers alike. They were there when civilizations rose. They were there when empires fell. And through it all, they remained quietly loyal. This is where we will pause for now, resting gently in this moment of growing partnership. In the next part, we will continue our journey, exploring how dogs became protectors, workers, and emotional anchors as human societies became more complex and more connected. Let these images settle softly in your mind. A dog lying beside a child, a fire glowing in the distance, and a bond that has lasted for tens of thousands of years. As human societies slowly grew more complex, so too did the role of the dog. What had begun as a simple relationship between cautious wolves and struggling hunter-gatherers was now becoming something far more structured, far more intertwined with daily life. By this point in history, dogs were no longer just animals that lingered near camps. They were fully embedded into the human story. Across vast landscapes, from icy northern plains to sun-baked deserts, dogs were learning to live not as outsiders, but as members of human communities. Archaeological evidence reveals something deeply moving about this time. In ancient burial sites dating back thousands of years, dogs were often laid to rest beside humans. Some were buried with care, placed gently in the ground as though sleeping. This tells us something important. It tells us that dogs were not just tools. They were loved, they were mourned, they were remembered. In these early settlements, dogs served many purposes, but one of the most important was protection. As villages grew, so did the risk of danger. Rival groups competed for land and resources. Predators were drawn to stored food and livestock. In a world without walls, alarms, or modern weapons, dogs became the first line of defense. Their senses were sharper than any humans. They could hear footsteps in the dark long before a human could. They could smell strangers carried on the wind. When something was wrong, dogs knew it instantly. Their barking was not just noise. It was a warning system, one that saved countless lives. But dogs were more than guards. They were workers. As humans domesticated animals like sheep, goats, and cattle, dogs learned new roles. Some became herders, guiding flocks across open fields. Others became protectors, standing between vulnerable animals and predators. These dogs worked alongside humans, responding to hand signals, whistles, and spoken commands. Over time, entire breeds developed, each shaped by the tasks they performed. In cold northern regions, dogs pulled sleds across frozen tundra, carrying supplies and people over vast distances. In hunting cultures, dogs tracked game through forests and plains. In farming communities, dogs kept pests away and protected crops. Everywhere humans went, dogs adapted. What makes this so extraordinary is that dogs did not simply obey humans. They cooperated with them. They learned to understand our gestures, our tone of voice, and even our gaze. Studies of modern dogs show that they are remarkably skilled at reading human emotions. This ability did not appear overnight. It evolved over thousands of years of close contact, shaped by survival and companionship. Dogs that could understand humans were more likely to be fed, cared for, and allowed to stay. Those that could not were left behind. Slowly, the dogs that remained were the ones that could truly connect. As civilizations began to rise, dogs took on symbolic meaning as well. In ancient Egypt, dogs were associated with the afterlife and protection. In Greece, they were linked to healing and guardianship. In many cultures, dogs were seen as guides between worlds, loyal companions even beyond death. These beliefs did not come from nothing. They came from lived experience. People had seen dogs stand watch through the night, protect their families, and offer comfort in times of grief. It was only natural that such animals would become woven into myth and memory. Yet even as dogs became more important, they never lost their gentle side. In homes, dogs curled up beside fires. They lay near children. They followed their humans from room to room. They offered a quiet presence that asked for nothing more than to be near. This simple desire to be close may be one of the most powerful traits dogs ever developed. In a noisy, dangerous world, the steady presence of a dog provided calm. It still does today. As societies advanced, dogs continued to evolve alongside us. Different cultures shaped them in different ways. Some prized speed and bred dogs for racing. Others valued strength and bred dogs for guarding. Some favored beauty and bred dogs for companionship. But beneath all of these differences, the core of the dog remained unchanged. It was the same creature that once sat at the edge of a campfire, watching humans with curious eyes, waiting to see if it would be allowed to stay. And it stayed. This partnership changed both species. Humans became more successful hunters, farmers, and travelers. Dogs gained a place in a new world, one built not of forests and packs, but of homes and families. As we move forward into the next part, we will explore how this ancient bond continued to grow, shaping the modern dog and deepening the emotional connection that still exists between humans and their oldest friends. For now, let this moment linger. A village at dusk, a fire glowing softly, and a dog resting peacefully at the feet of the people it has chosen to call its own. As humanity stepped further into the age of villages, cities, and written history, the dog did not fade into the background. Instead, its presence became even more deeply woven into the story of civilization. While humans built walls, temples, and roads, dogs quietly continued doing what they had always done best, staying close, paying attention, and offering loyalty without condition. In ancient Mesopotamia, among the earliest known cities, dogs were already familiar figures. Clay tablets and carvings show them walking beside people, guarding homes, and appearing in religious imagery. They were not wild animals lurking outside the city walls. They lived among people, moving through streets and resting in courtyards. In these early urban worlds where crowds and noise replaced forests and open plains, dogs adapted again. They learned to navigate narrow paths and busy markets. They learned the routines of families. They learned where food might be found and where danger might appear. Their intelligence allowed them to thrive even in these new, human-made environments. In ancient Egypt, dogs held a special place in both daily life and spiritual belief. They were companions, hunters, and guards, but they were also sacred in a way. The god Anubis, often depicted with the head of a jackal or dog, was the guardian of the afterlife. This connection was not random. Egyptians saw in dogs a powerful combination of watchfulness and loyalty, qualities that felt fitting for a guide between worlds. Some dogs were mummified and buried with their owners, a sign of deep affection and respect. People believed their dogs would accompany them into the next life, just as they had in this one. In ancient Greece, dogs were known as healers and guardians. They appeared in stories and legends, often as faithful companions. The Greek hero Odysseus, after years of wandering, was recognized by his old dog Argus when he finally returned home. Even in his weakened state, the dog sensed his master's presence and wagged his tail before passing away. This story, thousands of years old, captures something timeless about the bond between humans and dogs: recognition, loyalty, and love that lasts beyond years. In Rome, dogs were used as guards, herders, and even soldiers. Mosaics in Roman homes sometimes read, "Beware of the dog," a warning to strangers that these animals were more than pets. They were protectors of family and property. Yet even in this practical role, dogs were often cherished. Roman writers described the comfort of a dog's companionship and the sadness felt when one was lost. As centuries passed and empires rose and fell, dogs remained constant. They traveled with nomads across deserts and steppes. They sailed with explorers across oceans. They marched with armies and slept beside farmers. In medieval Europe, dogs were everywhere. They guarded castles, hunted with nobles, and lived alongside peasants. Some were bred for specific tasks, like chasing foxes or retrieving birds. Others were simply kept for warmth and companionship. Small dogs often slept in beds, helping keep their owners warm during cold nights. Even during times of hardship, when food was scarce and life was uncertain, people kept their dogs. This says something powerful about the depth of the bond. Dogs were not just useful, they were wanted. As science and understanding of animals slowly improved, humans began to notice just how unique dogs were. They were not like cats, which remained more independent. They were not like livestock bred solely for food. Dogs seemed to be tuned into human emotion in a way no other creature was. They could sense fear before a word was spoken. They could tell when someone was ill or sad. They responded not just to commands, but to feelings. Modern research has shown that when dogs look into a human's eyes, both species release oxytocin, the hormone associated with bonding and love. This is the same hormone that bonds parents to children. In a very real biological sense, dogs and humans are wired to feel connected to one another. This wiring did not happen by accident. It was shaped over tens of thousands of years of living together, surviving together, and caring for one another. As the industrial age arrived, dogs adapted yet again. Cities grew larger, work changed. Many people no longer hunted or farmed, but dogs still found their place. They became companions in apartments, helpers for people with disabilities, search and rescue workers, and emotional supports. Even in a modern world filled with technology and noise, dogs continue to offer something ancient and grounding. They bring us back to simpler moments: a walk in the morning, a quiet evening at home, a warm presence beside us. They remind us of something we often forget in our busy lives: the value of connection. As the centuries rolled forward and human societies became more structured, the relationship between humans and dogs entered a new and fascinating phase. This was the age in which dogs began to take on many different forms, not just in their roles, but in their bodies, their personalities, and their place in human life. What had once been a single type of animal, the early dog, descended from wolves, now began to branch into many distinct kinds, each shaped by human needs, environments, and cultures. In different parts of the world, people began to notice that some dogs were better at certain tasks than others. Some were faster and more agile. Some were stronger and more powerful. Some were calmer and more gentle. Humans, who had already learned to shape plants and animals through careful breeding, began to do the same with dogs. Over generations, they allowed certain dogs to have puppies while others did not, depending on which traits they valued most. In cold regions, people favored dogs with thick fur and strong bodies. These dogs became the ancestors of breeds that could pull sleds, endure freezing temperatures, and travel long distances. In mountainous areas, people bred dogs that were sure-footed and alert, able to guard herds of sheep against predators. In open plains, people valued speed and endurance, creating dogs that could run beside horses and chase prey across wide spaces. In towns and cities, smaller dogs became more common. These dogs did not need to hunt or herd. Their job was simpler but no less important: to be companions. They lived in homes, slept on laps, and offered comfort in a world that was becoming increasingly crowded and noisy. Through this process of breeding, dogs began to look very different from one another. Some had long legs, some had short, some had curled tails, some had floppy ears. Their coats came in many colors and textures, but no matter how different they looked, they all shared the same ancient origin and the same deep connection to humans. What is remarkable is how willingly dogs adapted to these changes. Unlike many animals, dogs seemed eager to fit into whatever role humans gave them. They wanted to be useful, they wanted to be close. Whether they were guarding a flock, pulling a sled, or resting beside a hearth, dogs approached their work with the same quiet devotion. As humans spread across the globe, dogs went with them. They crossed oceans on ships, traveled through jungles and deserts, and climbed mountains. Wherever people made a home, dogs found a place within it. In some cultures, dogs were seen as protectors of the spirit. In others, they were symbols of loyalty and courage. In still others, they were simply beloved friends. But in every culture, dogs held a special status that went beyond their practical value. Even when times were difficult, people often kept their dogs. During wars, famines, and migrations, dogs stayed with their families. They shared in the hardships and the small moments of joy. Stories from history tell of dogs waiting for their owners who never returned, or traveling great distances to find the people they loved. These stories endure because they touch something deep in the human heart. As science advanced, humans began to study dogs more closely. They learned about their intelligence, their ability to understand human gestures, and their emotional sensitivity. Experiments showed that dogs could follow a human's pointing finger, recognize their owner's voice, and even respond to human facial expressions. This ability to understand us is one of the most extraordinary things about dogs. It is as though over thousands of years they have learned our language without words. They know when we are happy, they know when we are sad, they know when we need comfort, and they offer it freely. In the modern world, dogs have taken on many new roles. They guide people who cannot see. They help those who cannot hear. They detect illnesses, find lost people, and provide therapy to those who are struggling. They serve in rescue teams after disasters, and they bring joy to hospitals and nursing homes. Yet even with all these specialized jobs, the most important role of the dog remains the same as it was thousands of years ago: to be a companion, to sit beside us, to walk with us, to remind us that we are not alone. As technology continues to change our lives, dogs remain wonderfully simple. They live in the present moment. They greet us with joy. They forgive easily. They love without conditions. In a world that often feels complicated and overwhelming, dogs offer something steady and warm. They are living reminders of a partnership that began long ago, when a wolf chose to sit near a human fire and a human chose not to chase it away. The night grows quiet as we continue our journey. The kind of quiet that settles slowly, like snow falling in a deep forest. And in that quiet, it becomes easier to imagine how long this story truly is. Because the story of dogs and humans is not a story of kings or battles or inventions. It is a story of evenings, of campfires, of footsteps in the dark, of warmth shared when the world felt cold. Long after dogs had become companions, long after they had taken their place beside humans in villages and towns, something even more gentle began to grow between them. It was no longer just survival, it was comfort. In ancient homes, dogs would curl up beside sleeping families. Their breathing became part of the night, slow and steady. Children would rest their heads on warm fur. Elderly people would feel a familiar presence beside them when the house felt empty. Dogs did not speak, but somehow they understood. They understood when someone needed company. They understood when someone needed space. They understood when someone simply needed to not be alone. In a world without electricity, without glowing screens, without the endless noise of modern life, dogs were often the only soft presence in the darkness. When the fire dimmed and shadows crept along the walls, a dog would lift its head, listening, and humans could fall asleep knowing that someone was watching. Somewhere deep in the human mind, that feeling never left. Even today, when a dog sleeps at the foot of a bed, it is repeating something ancient, a ritual older than writing, older than cities, older than memory. The dog is keeping watch. As time passed, humans began to move more slowly. Life became less about wandering and more about staying. Fields replaced forests, homes replaced tents, but dogs did not drift away from us when this happened. Instead, they settled even deeper into our lives. They learned the sounds of doors, the rhythm of footsteps, the way voices change when someone is tired, the difference between laughter and sadness. They learned when it was time to play, when it was time to rest, when it was time to simply sit quietly beside someone who was thinking. And as dogs learned us, we learned them too. We learned the meaning of a wagging tail, the softness of ears pressed back in trust, the quiet way a dog might lean against someone as if to say, "I am here." In many ways, dogs became our emotional mirrors. They reflected back the best parts of us, loyalty, patience, and love without conditions. They did not care how much we owned, how powerful we were, or how successful we seemed. They cared only about presence. Are you here? That simple question was all that mattered. Long ago, when humans still traveled by foot and lived close to the land, dogs often walked beside them for miles. There was no rush, just steady movement through the world. Dogs would trot ahead, sniffing the air, then return to check on their people. A glance, a wag, a shared moment. Those long walks created something peaceful in both species, a shared rhythm. Even now, when people walk their dogs through quiet neighborhoods or along winding trails, that ancient rhythm returns. Footsteps and paws moving together, breath rising and falling in time, the world feeling softer for a little while. In the evenings, dogs would often find their favorite places, near the fire, beside a doorway. Under a table, they learned where the warmth was, where the people were, where they felt safest, and slowly those places became home. For dogs, home was not a building, home was us. That is something no other animal has ever truly done. Many creatures can live near humans, but dogs chose to belong with us. They made our lives their world. As generations passed, children were born into homes that already had dogs. They did not remember a time without them. For these children, dogs were not wild animals. They were simply part of life, a warm body to hug, a playful friend, a gentle presence at bedtime. Dogs would grow old beside them, puppies would arrive, and the cycle would continue. Through joy and sorrow, dogs remained quietly loyal. In some homes, dogs would sit by the door waiting for someone who was late. They did not know about clocks. They only knew that someone they loved was missing, and so they waited, sometimes for hours, sometimes for days. That kind of patience is rare in the world. It is the patience of a heart that trusts. As the centuries moved forward and the world became louder, dogs stayed soft. They did not demand, they did not judge. They simply offered themselves again and again. A nudge of the nose, a warm body curled nearby, a gentle gaze that says, "You matter." People often talk about how humans train dogs, but just as much, dogs trained humans. They taught us how to be gentle, how to be present, how to care for another living being simply because they exist. In quiet moments when everything else fades away, that lesson still remains. Even now, in modern homes filled with light and sound, dogs still find their way to our sides. They lie on floors, they rest their heads on knees. They follow us from room to room, not because they need anything, but because they want to be close. And in that closeness, something ancient continues to live, a connection that began when a wolf chose to sit near a fire, and a human chose to let it stay. The world drifts softly onward, just as it always has. Time moves not in sharp lines, but in gentle waves, and somewhere within those waves, dogs and humans continue walking side by side. As we move deeper into this story, the pace slows even more. There is no need to hurry. This is a story meant to be felt, not rushed. Long after dogs had become part of human homes, long after they had learned the rhythm of our days and nights, they began to settle into something even more tender. They became keepers of quiet moments. In the early mornings, when light barely touched the horizon, dogs would wake before anyone else. They would stretch, yawn, and quietly walk through the home, checking that everything was still as it should be. A door closed, a window still, a familiar scent resting in its place. Only when the world felt safe would they lie back down. At night, as humans slept, dogs often stayed half awake. Their ears would twitch at distant sounds, a branch moving outside, a footstep in the dark. Even in deep rest, part of them was always listening. That instinct, passed down from wolves long ago, never left, and yet there was no fear in it. Only calm vigilance. This is one of the quiet gifts dogs bring to us. They hold watch so we do not have to. Their presence allows humans to surrender to sleep, knowing that someone gentle and alert is nearby. Over time, this feeling became woven into the human sense of safety. Many people find it difficult to sleep when alone, but with a dog nearby, the room feels different. The silence feels less empty. The darkness feels less uncertain. The dog does not speak, but its presence says, "You are not alone." And for the human heart, that is often enough. As years turned into decades and decades into centuries, dogs continued to evolve alongside us, not just in body, but in spirit. They learned to be patient. They learned to wait. They learned to live within the slow, everyday moments of human life. They waited by doors. They waited by windows. They waited by beds. Waiting became one of their quiet talents. Waiting for someone to come home. Waiting for a hand to reach down. Waiting for a voice they love. There is something deeply peaceful about a dog waiting. It is not anxious. It is hopeful. It trusts that what it is waiting for will arrive. This trust is something dogs give freely. In villages long ago, dogs would often wander through narrow paths, greeting familiar faces. They knew who belonged. They knew who was new. They would wag their tails for friends and watch quietly when strangers passed. In this way, dogs became part of the social fabric of human life. They recognized people not by names, but by scent, by movement, by the subtle way someone carried themselves. They knew who was kind, they knew who was sad, they knew who needed a little extra gentleness. And when someone was hurting, a dog might quietly sit beside them, not trying to fix anything, simply offering presence. This silent comfort is one of the most powerful things dogs do. Humans often feel pressure to speak, to explain, to make sense of their emotions. Dogs do not ask for any of that. They sit. They listen without ears. They understand without words. This is why so many people feel closer to their dogs than to anyone else. The bond is simple. The bond is quiet. The bond is safe. As the modern world grew faster, dogs remained slow. They still enjoy long naps in warm spots. They still find joy in simple things, a walk, a meal, a kind voice. In a world that changes constantly, dogs are wonderfully steady. Every morning they wake up ready to love. Every evening they curl up ready to rest. They do not dwell on the past. They do not worry about the future. They live right here. And when humans are with dogs, they are gently invited to do the same. Long ago, when the first wolves approached human camps, neither species knew what the future would bring. They only knew that something felt right about being close. That feeling has never faded. The quiet never really ends. When the last thought drifts away and the room grows still, something ancient remains, like a soft heartbeat beneath the silence. It is the same quiet that once wrapped around the first human camps beneath wide, star-filled skies. It is the same quiet that wolves once listened to as they stood just beyond the glow of firelight, waiting to see if they would be allowed closer. And now that quiet rests inside every home where a dog sleeps. The story continues not with loud moments, but with soft ones. A dog shifting in its sleep, a slow breath rising and falling, a gentle warmth shared between two beings who no longer remember a time apart. Long ago, dogs stopped thinking of humans as something separate from themselves. They did not see us as another species. They saw us as their family, their pack, their world. That is why they stay so close. They follow us from room to room, not out of need, but out of belonging. Where you go, they go. Where you rest, they rest. Where you feel safe, they feel safe too. In the deep past, a wolf could not survive alone. It needed its pack. And when wolves slowly became dogs, that need for connection did not disappear. It simply changed shape. Humans became their pack. Even now, in quiet houses and quiet hearts, dogs still listen for us. They listen for our footsteps. They listen for our voices. They listen for the subtle signs that everything is still as it should be. And when they hear them, they relax. Some dogs sleep lightly, waking often, their ears twitching at small sounds. Others sleep deeply, trusting completely that their humans will keep them safe just as they keep us safe. This balance, this gentle exchange of trust, is the heartbeat of the bond. Thousands of years ago, dogs did not know they were shaping the future. They only knew that being close to humans felt right, that the fire was warm, that the voices were familiar, that the presence of these strange, two-legged creatures brought a sense of calm. And humans felt it too. They felt less alone with a dog beside them, less afraid of the dark, less lost in a world that could be cruel and unpredictable. Together, they created something neither could have made alone, a shared life. As generations passed, this shared life became tradition. Dogs were born into homes where their mothers and grandmothers had lived beside humans. They grew up surrounded by our smells, our sounds, our routines. To them, the human world was the only world. They learned when breakfast came, when walks happened, when it was time to sleep, and in learning these rhythms, they became part of them. Children grew up with dogs beside them. They whispered secrets into furry ears. They cried into warm necks. They laughed when tails wagged wildly. For many children, a dog was their first true friend, a friend who never judged, a friend who never left, a friend who listened without needing to understand. As those children grew older, the dogs grew older too. Their fur turned gray, their movements slowed, but their love did not fade. It simply grew quieter, deeper, more gentle. And when those dogs finally rested, humans mourned them not as animals, but as family. This, too, is part of the story. Love does not last forever, but it always leaves something behind. Every dog that has ever lived beside a human has left an imprint on the human heart, a softness, a memory. A sense that the world once felt warmer because that dog was in it. And when a new dog arrives, that warmth returns. It always does. The bond continues unbroken, passing from one generation to the next like a quiet flame that never goes out. And somewhere deep inside every dog, there is still a trace of that first wolf who chose to sit by the fire, waiting, watching, staying. The sky above that ancient fire was wide and full of stars, and in the soft hush between one heartbeat and the next, the bond between humans and dogs quietly deepened. No one announced it, no one wrote it down. It simply happened the way gentle things always do. A dog rested its head on the ground, close enough to feel the warmth of human feet, close enough to hear the slow breathing of someone asleep. The fire crackled softly, sending small sparks into the air like drifting fireflies. Beyond the glow, the world waited in darkness, but inside the circle of light there was peace. That peace became a memory, and then a habit, and then a tradition that traveled forward through time. Even as centuries passed and people began to build walls instead of fires, roofs instead of open skies, dogs still sought that same closeness. They found it in the quiet corners of homes, in the spaces near doors, in the places where their humans spent the most time. A dog always knows where the heart of a home is. In the stillness of the night, dogs would rise softly and walk through rooms, checking that everything was as it should be. They would sniff the air, listen for unfamiliar sounds, and then return to their resting places with a calm certainty that all was well. This quiet patrol was never taught. It came from somewhere older, from a time when the dark held danger and being alert meant survival. But now it was no longer about fear, it was about care. Dogs were no longer guarding against wild predators alone. They were guarding dreams, they were guarding sleep, they were guarding the fragile peace that comes when someone feels safe enough to close their eyes, and humans felt it even if they could not explain it. There was a deep comfort in knowing that a gentle, watchful presence was nearby. That if something moved in the night, someone would notice, that if the world shifted, they would not face it alone. Over generations, this sense of safety became woven into the human nervous system. Even now, many people sleep more deeply when a dog is nearby. The ancient mind remembers. In the quiet hours before dawn, dogs often dream, their paws twitch, their noses quiver. Perhaps they are running through long grass, perhaps they are following a familiar scent, perhaps they are simply remembering a time when life was simple and open and full of wind. Whatever they dream of, it is always touched by the presence of humans, because humans have become the center of their world. As dogs and humans continued to live together, they developed a silent language, a raised eyebrow, a soft sound, a gentle touch. Dogs learned what these things meant. They learned when it was time to be calm and when it was time to be excited. They learned when their humans needed space and when they needed closeness. This understanding did not come from training alone. It came from living side by side, day after day, year after year, sharing the small moments that make up a life. Dog watching a human cook, a human watching a dog sleep, a shared walk under a cloudy sky, a quiet evening by the fire. These moments may seem ordinary, but they are the threads that hold the bond together. As the modern world grew brighter and louder, dogs remained gentle and grounded. They did not chase success. They did not worry about tomorrow. They lived in the now, and in doing so, they invited humans to slow down too, to notice the way sunlight falls on the floor, to listen to the sound of rain, to feel the simple joy of being alive. Dogs do not need much to be happy. A kind voice, a warm place, a familiar scent. And because their needs are so simple, they remind humans of something we often forget. Happiness does not have to be complicated. In homes around the world, dogs continue to settle into the rhythms of human life. They wake when their people wake. They rest when their people rest. They wait patiently when their people are away. And when those people return, no matter how long it has been, dogs greet them with the same joy every time. That joy is not measured in minutes or hours, it is measured in connection. To a dog, the most important thing in the world is not time, it is togetherness. And so the story goes on. A dog curled up beside a sleeping child, a dog walking slowly beside an elderly person, a dog waiting by the door for someone who will soon come home. These quiet scenes are happening everywhere all the time, like soft echoes of that first moment when a wolf chose to stay near a human fire. That choice made so long ago still shapes our lives today. The night moves gently forward, and with it the quiet story of dogs and humans continues, like a river that never stops flowing, even when it looks still on the surface. Somewhere a dog sighs in its sleep, a long slow breath that rises and falls like a tide, and in that breath is the echo of countless nights spent beside human hearts. Long ago, when the world was still wide and unshaped, dogs learned the sound of our breathing. They learned how to tell when someone was awake and when someone had drifted into dreams. They learned when it was safe to relax and when it was time to listen. That ancient skill never faded. Even now, in houses made of stone and wood, in apartments high above the ground, dogs still listen in the dark. They still sense when something changes. They still rise quietly and check that everything is all right. And when it is, they return to rest with a soft certainty that comes from knowing their people are safe. This is not something they were taught. It lives deep inside them, passed down through thousands of generations, from wolf to dog, from wilderness to home. As humans began to live longer lives and build more complex worlds, dogs became something even more precious. They became witnesses. They watched children grow. They watched families change. They watched the seasons come and go. A dog might be there when a baby is born and still be there when that child becomes an adult. Through all of it, the dog remains, quietly observing, loving, remembering. And dogs do remember. They remember voices. They remember faces. They remember routines. They remember who belongs. This memory creates a sense of home that no building can replace. Home is not just walls and roofs. Home is the familiar scent of someone you love. Home is the sound of footsteps you recognize. Home is the presence of a being who knows you without asking. Dogs give us that. As the modern age arrived, many people began to feel disconnected from the natural world. Cities grew taller, lives grew busier, time felt faster. But dogs continued to live by a different rhythm, one shaped by the rising and setting of the sun, by the need for rest, by the simple pleasure of being outside. When a dog pulls gently on a leash, eager to go for a walk, it is not just asking to move. It is asking to experience the world, to smell the air, to feel the ground, to notice the small changes in the environment. And when humans walk beside their dogs, they are drawn back into that experience too. They notice the wind, they notice the birds. They notice the quiet beauty of ordinary things. In this way, dogs keep us connected to something ancient and grounding. They remind us that life is not only about thinking and planning, it is also about being. Long ago, when wolves became dogs, they chose to live in the human world, but they never forgot the wild completely. They still carry within them a memory of open spaces, of long journeys, of quiet nights under the stars. Perhaps that is why they seem so peaceful when they sleep. Perhaps in their dreams they are still running through moonlit fields, always knowing that when they wake their humans will be nearby. This trust, this deep and simple faith is one of the greatest gifts dogs have given us. They believe in us. They believe that we will come back when we leave. They believe that we will feed them. They believe that we will care for them. And because they believe, they offer us something rare, unconditional loyalty. This loyalty is not based on what we do or who we are. It is based on the bond itself, a bond that began when two different species found comfort in each other's presence. That bond has lasted through ice ages and empires, through migrations and modern cities, through all the changes the world has seen. It is still here, a dog resting its head on a human's knee. A dog waiting patiently by a door, a dog sleeping beside a bed. The story drifts on as softly as a breath on a sleeping night. Somewhere a dog shifts its weight, curling just a little closer to the warmth it has known for its entire life. That warmth is not only the heat of a body or the glow of a fire. It is the warmth of belonging, the warmth of being exactly where it is meant to be. Long ago, before there were streets or houses or even names for things, wolves learned what it meant to stay, not to wander endlessly, not to disappear into the wilderness, but to remain close to something gentle and familiar. That choice, made quietly and without ceremony, changed everything. Because when a wolf stays, it becomes something new. It becomes a dog. And when a human lets a wolf stay, the human becomes something new as well. They become someone who is not alone. In the ancient world, loneliness was dangerous. To be alone meant vulnerability. It meant exposure to the cold, to hunger, to fear. But when humans and dogs found each other, loneliness softened. There was someone there, someone watching. Someone sharing the silence. Even now, that ancient comfort remains. When a dog lies beside someone in a quiet room, it fills the space with something gentle. A presence that says, "You are safe here." Dogs do not try to change us. They do not ask us to be better or stronger or more successful. They simply ask us to be present. And when we are present, something inside us relaxes. Through the centuries, dogs have witnessed every version of humanity. They have seen us build and destroy, love and grieve, wander and settle. Through it all, they have stayed close, as if quietly reminding us of who we are beneath everything else. They have walked beside farmers in fields and children in playgrounds. They have waited by hospital beds and greeted soldiers returning home. They have been there for first steps and final goodbyes, always there. There is something deeply comforting about a creature that does not leave. Dogs do not measure life in years or achievements. They measure it in moments spent together. A walk, a meal, a nap in the sun, a kind word. These simple things are enough for them. And in their simplicity, they teach us something important, that love does not need to be complicated, it only needs to be real. As the modern world grows faster, louder, and more distracted, dogs remain steady. They do not rush. They do not multitask. They focus completely on what is in front of them. And when that is us, we feel it. We feel seen. A dog's eyes are not filled with judgment or expectation. They are filled with attention, pure, gentle attention. In that gaze, many people find a kind of peace they cannot find anywhere else. This is why when life feels overwhelming, people often turn to their dogs, not for answers, but for comfort. A dog will sit with you in silence. A dog will rest its head on your knee. A dog will simply be there, and sometimes that is all we need. Long after the first wolves approached human camps, long after the first dogs curled up by human fires, this quiet exchange continues. Humans offer care, dogs offer companionship. Together they create something warm and enduring, a shared world. This world exists not in maps or borders, but in living rooms, in parks, in quiet bedrooms where dogs sleep beside their humans. It exists wherever a dog waits patiently for a door to open or listens for a familiar voice. It exists wherever two beings choose to stay. The night continues to stretch softly, like a long and gentle dream that does not want to end, and the story of dogs and humans moves forward with it, unhurried and warm, carried on the slow rhythm of shared breathing and quiet companionship. Somewhere in a peaceful home or a small apartment or a quiet cabin at the edge of a forest, a dog is sleeping beside someone it loves, and that simple scene contains the entire history of this ancient bond. Long before there were clocks or calendars, dogs learned the rhythm of human life by listening. They listened to footsteps moving through dirt or across wooden floors. They listened to voices rise and fall. They listened to the subtle sounds that meant food was coming, or that it was time to rest, or that someone was feeling sad. In all that listening, they learned how to belong. Belonging is not something that can be taught. It grows slowly, like roots beneath the soil. dogs grew those roots deep inside the human world. And because of that, they do not wander far from us, even when they have the freedom to do so. They want to stay close where the familiar sounds and smells are, where the people they love are. In the quiet hours of the night when most humans are asleep, dogs often remain half awake. They shift in their beds, lifting their heads at small noises, then settling again when everything feels right. This gentle watchfulness is not driven by fear. It is driven by care. A dog wants to know that its world is safe. And in that way, dogs have always been guardians, not just of homes, but of peace. As centuries passed and humans built larger and more complicated lives, dogs continued to live in the small, tender moments. They waited by doors for their people to come home. They sat patiently during long days. They celebrated the smallest joys like a walk outside or a favorite treat. They noticed when someone was not quite themselves, and they responded with quiet attention. That attention is a kind of love. It is not loud, it does not demand, it simply stays. There is something deeply healing about being with a creature that is content just to be near you. In a world that often expects so much, dogs expect very little. They do not need explanations. They do not need promises. They only need presence. And because of that, being with a dog feels like resting. Long ago, wolves were restless. They roamed across vast landscapes, always moving, always searching. But when they became dogs, they learned the beauty of staying, of returning to the same place, of finding comfort in routine. This change was not a loss, it was a transformation. In trading the endless wilderness for the human world, dogs gained something precious: connection. They gained a family. Even today, dogs behave as if their humans are their entire world. They follow them from room to room. They lie near them. They watch their faces. They listen to their voices. They seem to know when something is wrong, and they offer comfort without needing to be asked. This quiet empathy is one of the most extraordinary things about dogs. It is not learned from books or taught in schools. It is felt. It is instinctive. It comes from thousands of years of living close to human hearts. In the gentle moments before sleep, when the world grows still, this connection feels especially strong. A dog curled beside someone on a couch. A dog resting at the foot of a bed. A dog breathing softly in the dark. These are the moments when time seems to slow, when worries fade, and when the ancient bond between species feels close enough to touch. As the world continues to change, dogs remain beautifully simple. They do not worry about tomorrow. They do not dwell on yesterday. They live in now, and they invite us to join them there. This is one of their greatest gifts. They teach us how to be present, to notice the warmth of the sun, to enjoy the sound of rain, to find joy in a walk, a meal, a moment of rest. In their quiet way, dogs remind us of what truly matters: not success, not possessions, but connection. And so the story continues, carried forward in every home that has ever welcomed a dog. It is written in wagging tails, in soft eyes, in the steady presence of a loyal friend. It began long ago when a wolf chose to sit by a human fire. The story drifts onward, carried by the soft and steady rhythm of countless hearts beating in quiet rooms across the world, where dogs and humans continue to share their lives in ways so simple and so deep that they hardly need to be spoken aloud. Somewhere a dog stretches in its sleep, paws twitching gently as if chasing a dream, and that dream is shaped by a world that has always included people. Long ago, when the earth was still wild and humans were learning how to make it home, dogs discovered something remarkable about us. We were not just providers of food or warmth. We were creatures who felt, we grieved, we hoped, we loved. And dogs, with their quiet intelligence and open hearts, learned to feel alongside us. They learned the difference between laughter and tears. They learned when a voice was gentle and when it was tense. They learned when someone needed space and when someone needed comfort, and they responded in the only way they knew how, by staying close. In ancient times, a dog might follow its human through tall grass or along winding paths, always keeping a careful eye on the world. It would move ahead and then back again, checking that everything was all right. This pattern of watching and returning became a kind of dance, a way of saying, "I am here and you are safe." That dance still exists. When a dog runs ahead on a walk and then turns back to look at its person, it is repeating a ritual older than memory. It is checking in. It is making sure the bond is still there, and it always is. As generations passed, dogs became woven into every part of human life. They were there at the beginnings and the endings. They were there in joy and in sorrow. They sat quietly beside people when words were too heavy, and they celebrated wildly when happiness filled the air. In homes, dogs learned to recognize the sound of keys, the creak of doors, the rhythm of footsteps on stairs. They knew when someone was coming home long before that person appeared. Their tails would begin to wag, their ears would perk up, and their whole bodies would fill with anticipation. That anticipation was not just about food or walks, it was about reunion. Dogs understand reunion in a way that is almost pure. They do not hold on to anger. They do not keep score. When someone returns, it is always a joy, no matter how much time has passed. This ability to forgive and to love again and again is one of the most beautiful things about dogs. In a world that can be complicated and unforgiving, dogs offer something gentle and steady. They remind us that it is okay to be happy when someone you love comes back, that it is okay to show your joy, that it is okay to be open. As night falls and the world grows quiet, dogs often settle into their favorite places. Some curl up in beds, some stretch out on cool floors, some choose a spot near a window or a door. Wherever they lie, they are always tuned into their surroundings, always aware of the people they love. In the darkness, their presence is like a soft light. You may not see it, but you can feel it. A dog's breathing, a dog's warmth, a dog's quiet readiness to be there if needed. This is not something that fades with time. It is renewed every day, every night, in every home where a dog sleeps. As the modern world becomes more digital and distant, dogs remain wonderfully physical. They need to be walked, they need to be touched, they need to be held and spoken to. In caring for them, humans are reminded to care for something real, something living, something that exists outside of screens and schedules. This keeps us grounded. It brings us back to our bodies, to our senses, to the simple pleasures of movement and presence. When you throw a ball for a dog, you are not just playing. You are participating in an ancient exchange of energy and trust. When you pet a dog, you are not just touching fur. You are connecting with a being that has chosen you as its family. And when a dog looks up at you with soft, trusting eyes, something inside you responds, something deep and old, something that remembers a time when survival depended on cooperation, on loyalty, on staying together. That memory lives on quietly in the heart of every dog and every human who loves one. The story of dogs and humans is not written in loud moments or dramatic events. It is written in everyday life, in walks and meals and naps, in waiting and returning, in simple acts of care. It is written in the way a dog rests its head on a human's knee, in the way a human smiles at a wagging tail, in the way both feel a little less alone because the other is there. As the great ice sheets slowly melted and the climate warmed, human groups left their old hunting grounds and followed herds of animals into new territories. Some traveled along coastlines, others crossed vast grasslands, some moved into dense forests while others climbed into high mountains, and everywhere humans went, dogs went too. This was the moment when dogs began to truly change. In the earliest days, all dogs were similar in size and shape, not far removed from their wolf ancestors. But as they entered different environments, new pressures shaped them. In cold northern regions, dogs that grew thicker fur and stronger bodies survived better. These dogs became the ancestors of sled dogs and Spitz-type breeds. Their bodies were built to conserve heat. Their paws were wide to grip ice and snow. Their endurance was remarkable, allowing them to travel mile after mile beside humans. In warmer climates, dogs evolved differently. Lighter bodies, shorter coats, and longer legs allowed them to stay cool and move quickly. These dogs became hunters, runners, and guards in deserts and open plains. They helped humans track prey, chase animals, and protect camps from threats. In forested regions, dogs became agile and alert. They learned to move quietly through trees and undergrowth. They helped humans hunt small game and warned them of predators hiding in the shadows. This is how dogs began to divide into different lineages, shaped not by chance but by the needs of the humans they lived with and the lands they shared. Over thousands of years, these differences became stronger. Dogs in one region no longer looked exactly like dogs in another, but they were all still dogs. They all still shared the same ancient bond with humans. As humans began to settle into farming communities, dogs found new jobs. Herding dogs emerged, guiding sheep, goats, and cattle. These dogs were intelligent, responsive, and highly focused. They learned to control animals many times their size with nothing more than movement and eye contact. Farmers came to rely on them deeply because a good herding dog could protect an entire livelihood. Guard dogs also became more important. As humans stored food and raised animals, there was more to protect. Dogs learned to patrol the edges of farms and villages. Their deep barks warned intruders away. Their presence alone was often enough to prevent danger. At the same time, companion dogs continued to exist. Not every dog worked in the fields or guarded flocks. Some lived inside homes, especially in warmer regions or in wealthy households. These dogs were bred for gentleness, for loyalty, and for the simple joy of being close to people. This was when the emotional role of dogs began to grow even stronger. Humans were no longer just surviving, they were building lives. Families, traditions, and homes became more complex, and dogs became part of that emotional world. They were there for celebrations and for losses. They were there when children were born and when loved ones passed away. Even in ancient times, people began to write about their dogs. In tablets, scrolls, and carvings, dogs appeared not just as tools but as friends. Some were given names, some were remembered after death, some were honored in stories. This tells us something important. By this point in history, dogs were no longer just animals that lived near humans. They were family. As human societies grew, so did the variety of dogs. People began to intentionally breed dogs for certain traits. This was not science as we know it today, but careful observation. Humans noticed which dogs were better at hunting, which were calmer around children, which were stronger, faster, or more obedient. They allowed those dogs to have puppies, shaping future generations. Over time, this created the first recognizable types of dogs. Some were built for speed, some for strength, some for guarding, some for companionship. But all of them were built for one thing above all else, living with humans. As humans traveled out of their original homelands, dogs followed. Some groups crossed into Europe, others moved into Asia. Some traveled along coastlines, eventually reaching places that would become Australia and the Americas. These journeys took thousands of years. They were slow, difficult, and full of uncertainty, but dogs were there for every mile. Archaeological evidence shows that wherever early humans went, dogs appeared soon after. Their bones are found in ancient campsites, burial grounds, and villages across the world. In many places, dogs arrived before livestock. This suggests just how important they were. They were not an extra. They were part of the core of human life. In these new lands, dogs encountered new animals, new climates, and new challenges. Once again, they adapted. In the frozen north, dogs became essential to survival. Humans in these regions depended on them to pull sleds, find food, and navigate endless snowfields. Dogs could smell seals beneath the ice. They could travel in conditions that would kill a human alone. In these harsh environments, the bond between dogs and humans became one of complete interdependence. In tropical regions, dogs took on different roles. They guarded villages, hunted small game, and lived closely with families. Their coats became thinner, their bodies became more agile. They learned to deal with heat, humidity, and new kinds of predators. On islands, dogs often became smaller, space was limited, food was scarce. Dogs that needed less to survive were more successful. These island dogs often became gentle companions, living close to people and forming tight bonds. As thousands of years passed, these regional differences deepened. Dogs in one part of the world began to look very different from dogs in another, but they could still recognize one another. They could still understand each other. They were all part of the same ancient lineage. At the same time, humans were becoming more intentional in how they shaped dogs. Instead of letting nature alone decide which dogs survived, people began to guide the process. They chose which dogs were allowed to breed. They selected for traits they found useful or pleasing. This was the beginning of selective breeding. Hunting dogs were bred to have sharp noses and endless stamina. Herding dogs were bred to be intelligent, focused, and responsive. Guard dogs were bred to be strong, alert, and protective. Companion dogs were bred to be gentle, affectionate, and calm. Over many generations, these choices created distinct types of dogs. Some were large and powerful, others were small and delicate. Some were built to run, others to rest beside a fire. Yet even as dogs became more diverse, they remained emotionally connected to humans. That connection did not weaken, it grew stronger. Dogs learned to read human faces. They learned to follow pointing fingers. They learned to understand tone of voice. This made them incredibly effective partners in everything from hunting to family life. Modern science has confirmed something humans have known for a long time. Dogs are uniquely skilled at understanding us. They are better at reading human social cues than any other animal, even other primates. This ability evolved because dogs that understood humans survived better in a human world. So as dogs became more specialized, they also became more emotionally tuned to us. As villages grew into towns and towns into cities, dogs learned to live in places very different from the open camps of the past. Streets replaced trails, walls replaced forests. The sounds of people, carts, animals, and markets filled the air, but dogs adapted just as they always had. They learned which paths were safe, which humans were familiar, and where food and rest could be found. In these early cities, dogs became both residents and guardians, watching over narrow alleyways and busy doorways. Some dogs lived in households, sleeping near families, protecting children, and alerting their humans to strangers. Others lived in the spaces between homes, moving freely through streets, forming loose groups that still kept close to people. Even these free-roaming dogs were not wild. They were shaped by human life, dependent on human presence, and deeply connected to the rhythms of the communities around them. In farming societies, dogs took on increasingly specialized roles. Herding dogs became essential partners, guiding livestock across fields and protecting them from predators. These dogs were trained to respond to subtle signals, often with nothing more than a whistle or a hand gesture. Over time, they developed extraordinary intelligence and focus, capable of managing entire flocks with remarkable precision. guard dogs grew larger and stronger. Their deep barks warned intruders away, and their loyalty to their human families made them fearless protectors. In a world without modern security, a good dog was often the difference between safety and danger. Hunting dogs became more refined as well. Some were bred to follow scent trails across long distances. Others were bred to flush animals out of hiding. Still others were bred to retrieve prey gently without damaging it. These dogs worked in close coordination with humans, creating a partnership that allowed people to hunt more effectively and more sustainably. As these working roles expanded, so did the diversity of dogs. Over generations, humans began to recognize that dogs could be shaped not only for physical abilities, but also for temperament. Some dogs were calm and patient, others were energetic and bold, some were affectionate and gentle, others were independent and watchful. By selecting which dogs were allowed to have puppies, humans slowly guided the emotional and behavioral traits of dogs. Dogs that were easier to live with, more cooperative, and more attuned to human emotions were more likely to be kept and cared for. Over time, this created animals that were not just physically adapted to human life, but emotionally adapted as well. This emotional adaptation is one of the most remarkable parts of the story. Dogs evolved not only to survive alongside humans, but to understand them. They became sensitive to our moods, our voices, and even our facial expressions. They learned when someone was angry, afraid, or sad, and they learned how to respond in ways that strengthened the bond. In many ancient cultures, this deep connection was recognized and honored. Dogs appeared in art, in stories, and in religious beliefs. They were seen as protectors of the home, guides for the soul, and symbols of loyalty. Some societies believed dogs could see into the spirit world. Others believed they carried messages between the living and the dead. These beliefs did not come from nothing. They came from the way dogs seemed to understand things humans could not, the way they sensed danger before it arrived, the way they stayed close when someone was ill or grieving. To ancient people, this felt almost magical. As time moved forward into the age of empires, dogs continued to play important roles. They traveled with armies, guarded camps, and carried messages. Some were trained to protect important individuals. Others were used to find wounded soldiers on battlefields. Even in the chaos of war, dogs remained loyal to the people they served. At the same time, dogs continued to be loved as companions. In wealthy households, small dogs were kept as lap dogs and given special care. In working families, dogs were valued for both their help and their companionship. Across social classes and cultures, dogs found a place in human hearts. This combination of usefulness and emotional connection is what makes dogs unique. Many animals have been domesticated. Many animals have worked for humans, but none have formed the same deep emotional partnership that dogs have. As science advanced, humans began to study dogs more closely. They learned that dogs are capable of understanding human gestures and emotions in ways no other animal can. They discovered that dogs can form strong attachments, feel joy and fear, and even experience something similar to love. This scientific understanding only confirmed what people had always felt in their hearts. Dogs are not just animals. They are companions in the truest sense of the word. Explorers brought dogs on ships to help guard supplies, hunt food, and provide companionship on long and lonely journeys. In the vast emptiness of the open sea, a dog's presence was a reminder of home. Sailors spoke to them, played with them, and relied on them for comfort during long months away from land. When new shores were reached, dogs were among the first to step onto the unfamiliar ground, sniffing the air and helping humans sense what lay ahead. As continents became more connected, dogs from different regions began to meet and mix. Breeds that had developed separately for thousands of years were now brought together. This created even more diversity among dogs. New combinations of size, shape, and temperament appeared. Some were bred for beauty, others for skill. But through all of this, the fundamental nature of the dog remained unchanged. They still sought human companionship above all else. During this time, dogs also began to play new roles in growing cities. They worked as messengers, carrying notes between people. They served as guards for businesses and homes. They helped control pests and protect goods. And they continued to provide emotional support to their human families, especially as life in crowded cities became more stressful and less connected to nature. In the countryside, dogs remained essential to farming life. They herded animals, protected crops, and kept predators away. They knew their land and their people intimately. A good farm dog could read the weather, sense changes in livestock, and respond to human commands with incredible precision. As the industrial age arrived, many humans moved from rural areas into cities. Their lives changed dramatically, but they brought their dogs with them. In small apartments and busy streets, dogs adapted yet again. They learned to walk on leashes, to wait patiently, and to live in smaller spaces. They became quieter, more attentive, and more focused on their humans than ever before. It was during this period that the idea of the dog as a household companion truly took root. While dogs had always been companions, now more people began to keep dogs primarily for emotional connection rather than work. Dogs slept indoors, ate prepared food, and became part of daily family routines. This shift deepened the bond even further. Dogs became confidants. They listened to worries. They shared in joys. They provided comfort during illness and grief. In a rapidly changing world, they offered stability and familiarity. As science continued to advance, humans learned more about the minds and emotions of dogs. Studies showed that dogs can feel empathy, recognize their owners' faces, and even understand simple words and sentences. They can learn routines, remember events, and anticipate future actions. Their intelligence is shaped not only by their brains, but by their desire to connect with humans. This desire is what makes dogs so special. They are not just smart, they are socially attuned. They want to be part of human life. In modern times, dogs have taken on even more roles. They work as guide dogs for the blind, helping people navigate the world. They serve as therapy animals in hospitals, schools, and disaster zones, bringing comfort to those who are suffering. They help detect diseases, locate lost people, and assist law enforcement. These roles are not forced upon them. Dogs excel at these tasks because they want to help. They are motivated by the bond they share with humans. And at the same time, millions of dogs live simple, quiet lives as beloved pets. They sleep on couches, play in yards, and go on walks with their families. They are not famous. They are not working heroes, but they are deeply loved, and in their eyes that is enough. As we look at the modern dog with all its diversity of breeds, sizes, and personalities, it is easy to forget that they all share the same ancient origin. Every dog, no matter how small or large, no matter how fluffy or sleek, descends from wolves that chose to stay near human fires. That choice echoes through every wagging tail, every gentle nuzzle, every loyal gaze. The story of dogs and humans is still being written. Every new puppy, every new family, every new bond adds another line to this ancient tale. And as long as there are humans who welcome dogs into their lives and dogs who choose to love humans, this story will continue, quietly and endlessly, just as it always has. Scientists have learned that when humans and dogs look into each other's eyes, both experience a release of oxytocin, the hormone associated with love, trust, and bonding. This is the same chemical that connects parents to their children. It means that on a biological level, dogs are not just companions, they are family. This is not something humans trained dogs to do. It evolved naturally over thousands of years. Dogs that were better at bonding with humans were more likely to be cared for, protected, and allowed to have puppies. Over generations, this created animals that are uniquely tuned to human emotions and relationships. In the modern world, this emotional connection has become even more important. Many people live far from extended families. Communities are larger but often less close. In this environment, dogs provide something deeply needed, a sense of belonging. A dog does not care about your job, your mistakes, or your worries. It cares about you. It waits for you. It notices when you are sad. It celebrates when you are happy. In a fast and often impersonal world, this kind of unconditional presence is rare. At the same time, dogs continue to serve humans in practical ways. Working dogs are trained to detect explosives, drugs, and even cancer. Search and rescue dogs find people trapped under rubble or lost in wilderness. Police dogs help keep communities safe. Therapy dogs bring comfort to people in hospitals, nursing homes, and schools. All of these roles build on the same foundation that began thousands of years ago: trust, cooperation, and connection. Dogs want to work with us. They want to be part of what we do. That desire is not forced. It is part of who they are. Yet for all their abilities, the greatest gift dogs offer may still be their presence. They sit with us in quiet moments. They walk beside us. They lie at our feet while we read, work, or rest. They bring a sense of calm into our lives. This calm is powerful. Studies have shown that being with a dog can lower stress, reduce anxiety, and improve overall well-being. The simple act of petting a dog can slow the heart rate and ease the mind. In a world that often feels overwhelming, dogs help us breathe. They do not try to fix our problems. They simply remind us that we are not facing them alone. As we look back over the long history of dogs and humans, one thing becomes clear. This partnership is not based on dominance or control. It is based on mutual benefit and mutual care. Humans provided dogs with food, shelter, and protection. Dogs provided humans with help, companionship, and emotional support. Both species changed because of this relationship. Humans became better hunters, farmers, and protectors. Dogs became more social, more intelligent, and more emotionally connected. Together, they created something new. Even now, every dog that curls up beside a human is part of that ancient story. Every walk, every game, every quiet moment adds another chapter, and the story is still being written. New breeds are still emerging. New roles are still being discovered. New families are still welcoming dogs into their lives for the first time. The bond continues to grow and evolve just as it always has. And as long as there are dogs who choose to stay with humans and humans who choose to care for dogs, this story will go on quietly and beautifully into the future. As people began to live longer, more complex lives, they started to notice that dogs were not just helpful or comforting, but emotionally present in a way that was almost human. Dogs could feel sadness, they could feel excitement, they could sense when something was wrong. And they responded with a softness that no other animal seemed to offer. This emotional connection changed the way humans thought about animals. For much of history, animals were seen mainly as resources. They were hunted, farmed, or used for work, but dogs were different. They were not just part of the environment, they were part of the family. Children grew up talking to their dogs. Adults shared their worries with them. Elderly people found companionship in their presence. Dogs became silent listeners, gentle friends, and loyal shadows that followed their humans through every stage of life. This changed human culture. Stories and books began to include dogs as characters with personalities and feelings. Art showed dogs sitting beside people not as symbols but as companions. Even language changed. Words like loyal as a dog and man's best friend reflected how deeply dogs were woven into human identity. In many cultures, dogs came to represent qualities humans admired: faithfulness, courage, kindness, and unconditional love. They became symbols of the best parts of ourselves. At the same time, dogs continued to shape human behavior in subtle ways. People learned to be more patient by training a puppy. They learned responsibility by caring for another living being. They learned empathy by noticing how their dog responded to their moods. In this way, dogs quietly taught humans how to be better. In the modern world, this influence has only grown. Therapy dogs help people cope with trauma, anxiety, and loneliness. Service dogs give independence to people with disabilities. Emotional support dogs provide comfort in times of crisis. These roles are not just about tasks, they are about connection. A therapy dog sitting beside a grieving person is doing something deeply ancient. It is offering presence. It is sharing quiet. It is reminding someone that they are not alone. This is the same thing dogs have always done. From the first campfires to modern living rooms, dogs have been there in the moments when humans needed comfort most. Even today, when someone is sick or sad, a dog will often choose to stay close. It will rest its head on their lap. It will lie beside them. It will not leave. This instinct to comfort is not taught. It is part of who dogs are. As we continue to learn more about animal minds, scientists have found that dogs have regions in their brains that respond to human voices, to praise, and to affection. They feel joy when we are happy. They feel distress when we are upset. This deep emotional connection is rare in the animal world. It is the result of thousands of years of living side by side, of sharing food and danger and shelter, of watching each other grow and change. Dogs and humans have evolved together, not just physically, but emotionally. And this shared evolution has left a mark on both species. Humans have become more compassionate because of dogs. We have learned to care for something outside ourselves. We have learned to love without expecting anything in return. Dogs, in turn, have become more trusting, more gentle, and more deeply connected to us. Together, we have created a bond unlike any other in nature. As humans began to form larger and more permanent communities, dogs became a stabilizing presence. In a world that was changing, where people moved, built, and adapted, dogs remained steady. They learned the routines of each household. They knew when it was time to wake, when it was time to eat, and when it was time to rest. They knew who belonged in the home and who did not. Their presence made life feel more predictable and safe. In many early cultures, dogs were seen as guardians of the threshold, standing between the inside and the outside, between the familiar and the unknown. This was not just symbolic. Dogs physically guarded doorways, gates, and paths, alerting their humans to anything unusual. But they also represented something deeper. They were the protectors of the emotional space of a home. When a dog lies near a doorway or sleeps at the foot of a bed, it is doing more than resting. It is watching. It is holding a quiet line between safety and danger. This instinct has been passed down from wolf ancestors who once guarded their packs in the wild, but now the pack is human. As dogs became more closely integrated into families, they also began to play a role in teaching humans about consistency and care. Dogs thrive on routine. They like to eat at the same time, walk at the same time, and sleep at the same time. In meeting these needs, humans created patterns in their own lives. These patterns brought stability and structure. This is one of the quiet ways dogs shape human behavior. They teach us to slow down, they teach us to be present, they teach us to notice the small, everyday moments that make life meaningful. As the centuries passed and societies became more complex, dogs remained simple in the best way. They did not become obsessed with status or wealth. They cared about connection. They cared about being with their people. This simplicity became a refuge for humans. In times of stress or uncertainty, dogs provided something grounding, a familiar routine, a familiar presence, a gentle reminder that not everything has to be complicated. As modern psychology developed, researchers began to study this effect. They found that people who live with dogs often feel less lonely, less anxious, and more supported. The act of caring for a dog gives people a sense of purpose. The act of being loved by a dog gives people a sense of worth. These findings echo something humans have known intuitively for a long time. Dogs make us feel better, not because they solve our problems, but because they share them. When someone is sad, a dog does not try to fix the sadness. It simply stays. That quiet companionship can be more healing than any words. As technology has filled more of our lives, dogs remain wonderfully real. They need to be walked. They need to be fed. They need to be touched and spoken to. In caring for them, humans stay connected to the physical world. This connection is increasingly important in a time when so much happens on screens. A dog brings you outside. A dog brings you into the present. A dog reminds you that life is happening here and now. This is not a small thing. It is part of why dogs continue to be so important to humans, even in a highly advanced world. The ancient bond between dogs and humans has not weakened with time. It has grown deeper. Lives in every routine, every shared walk, every quiet evening spent together. In many early communities, dogs moved freely between homes, visiting neighbors, sleeping in doorways, and becoming familiar figures to everyone. They were known by children and elders alike. A dog might belong to one family, but it was welcomed by many. This shared presence helped create a sense of unity. Dogs acted as gentle bridges between people, softening interactions and bringing warmth to everyday encounters. As dogs learned the patterns of community life, they also learned to recognize who belonged and who did not. They became protectors not just of individual homes, but of entire neighborhoods. Their barking alerted everyone when something was out of place. Their presence discouraged danger. In this way, dogs contributed to the safety and cohesion of early societies. Over time, this role became more formal. Some dogs were trained specifically to guard villages, temples, or important buildings. Others were kept by watchmen or travelers. These dogs learned to be alert and disciplined, responding to commands and working closely with humans to keep communities safe. At the same time, dogs continued to be companions. They sat with people in marketplaces, followed them through streets, and rested beside them in quiet moments. This constant presence made dogs a familiar and comforting sight. They became symbols of home and belonging. As cultures developed, dogs began to appear in myths, legends, and stories. They were often portrayed as loyal guardians, wise guides, or faithful friends. These stories reflected the deep respect people had for dogs and the roles they played in daily life. In some cultures, dogs were believed to protect against evil spirits. In others, they were thought to guide souls in the afterlife. These beliefs were rooted in the way dogs seemed to sense things beyond human awareness. They could detect danger, illness, and emotional distress. To ancient people, this felt almost supernatural. As writing and record-keeping became more common, dogs were mentioned in texts, letters, and even laws. They were recognized as valuable members of society. Some were given special status, protected by rules that acknowledged their importance. This recognition shows how far the relationship had come. From wild wolves on the edge of campfires, dogs had become respected members of human communities. As the modern age approached, this trend continued. Dogs became more integrated into urban life. They were walked through streets, trained in schools, and cared for by veterinarians. Their health and well-being became a priority. People began to study dogs not just as animals, but as companions with emotional and social needs. This led to better care, better training, and a deeper understanding of what dogs need to thrive. Through all of this, the bond between humans and dogs remained at the center. Dogs continued to offer loyalty, companionship, and quiet support. Humans continued to offer care, shelter, and love. This mutual exchange is what has allowed the relationship to endure for so long. As we continue this journey, we will move into a chapter that explores how modern science has revealed even more about the minds and hearts of dogs, and how this knowledge is shaping the future of our partnership. For now, let the story rest gently, like a dog curled up in a familiar place, content and at peace, knowing that it belongs. Scientists studying canine behavior have discovered that dogs are incredibly skilled at reading human body language. They can follow a pointing finger, interpret facial expressions, and even sense subtle changes in posture and tone of voice. These abilities did not appear by accident. They evolved because dogs that could understand humans were more likely to survive in a human world. Over generations, dogs became attuned to us in a way no other animal has. They learned to see us not just as sources of food or shelter, but as social partners. This is why dogs look to humans for guidance, comfort, and reassurance. They want to know what we are thinking and feeling. Brain scans have shown that when dogs hear their owner's voice, the same regions of the brain light up that are associated with pleasure and attachment. This means that to a dog, a human voice is not just a sound. It is something meaningful and emotionally powerful. Dogs also experience emotions in ways that are surprisingly similar to humans. They feel joy when they play. They feel fear when they are threatened. They feel sadness when someone they love is gone. They can even feel jealousy when attention is given to another dog or person. This emotional complexity is one of the reasons dogs form such deep bonds with humans. They are not just reacting to us, they are relating to us. As research continues, scientists have also found that dogs have a remarkable memory for social experiences. They remember people who have treated them kindly and those who have been unkind. They remember places where they felt safe and places where they felt afraid. These memories shape their behavior and their relationships. This ability to remember and learn from emotional experiences is part of what makes dogs such powerful companions. They are not just living in the moment. They carry a history with them, a history that includes their time with humans. In therapy and medical settings, this emotional intelligence is put to use. Therapy dogs are trained to sense when someone is anxious, sad, or in pain. They respond by staying close, offering gentle contact, and providing a calming presence. This has been shown to reduce stress, lower blood pressure, and improve mood. Service dogs go even further. They are trained to recognize signs of medical emergencies, such as seizures or drops in blood sugar. They can alert their owners and even seek help. These dogs are not just trained animals. They are partners deeply attuned to the needs of the people they support. All of this builds on the same ancient foundation. Dogs want to be connected to humans. They want to help. They want to belong. As we learn more about how dogs think and feel, we are also learning more about ourselves. We are discovering how important connection, trust, and empathy are, not just between humans, but between species. The relationship between dogs and humans is one of the longest and most successful partnerships in history. It has survived changes in climate, culture, and technology. It has adapted to every new environment, and it continues to grow. In the modern era, as cities grow taller and technology becomes more woven into daily life, dogs remain one of the last living bridges between humans and the natural world, reminding people through their very presence that life is more than screens, schedules, and distant interactions, because a dog must be fed, walked, touched, spoken to, and loved, and in caring for a dog, humans are gently guided back into a relationship with something real and alive. As people wake in the morning, dogs are often the first to greet them, tails wagging, eyes bright with anticipation, ready to step into the new day as if it is a gift, and that simple joy becomes contagious, lifting human spirits even before a single word is spoken. And in this small ritual we can see how dogs quietly shape the emotional tone of human lives, setting a gentle rhythm that encourages people to start their days with warmth rather than stress. Throughout the day, dogs continue to anchor humans in the present moment, whether it is through the need for a walk, the request for food, or the invitation to play. Each of these interactions pulling attention away from worries and toward the simple reality of shared existence. And in this way, dogs act as subtle teachers of mindfulness, showing humans how to live with awareness and appreciation for the now. As evening comes and the world slows, dogs find their places once again beside their humans, settling into the quiet routines that signal rest. And in these moments of stillness, the ancient comfort of companionship returns, as steady and reassuring as it was thousands of years ago, when humans and dogs first learned to share the night. Beyond individual homes, dogs continue to play important roles in human society on a larger scale, serving as workers, helpers, and partners in countless fields, from guiding people with disabilities to detecting diseases, from assisting in search and rescue operations to providing emotional support in hospitals, schools, and disaster zones. And in each of these roles we see the same ancient pattern. Dogs offering their senses, their loyalty, and their presence to help humans navigate a complex and often difficult world. These modern roles are not separate from history. They are its continuation, because the traits that make dogs successful today, such as their attentiveness, their ability to read human cues, and their desire to cooperate, are the same traits that allowed their ancestors to thrive alongside early humans. And in this way, the past lives on in every working dog, every therapy dog, and every family pet. As science advances, researchers continue to uncover new layers of canine cognition and emotion, revealing that dogs are capable of understanding not only human gestures and words, but also the emotional states that lie behind them. And this deep sensitivity explains why dogs often seem to know when someone is sick, sad, or afraid, responding with a gentle closeness that feels almost intuitive, as if they are tuned to a frequency that humans cannot see but can deeply feel. This emotional intelligence is one of the most powerful aspects of the human-dog bond, because it allows dogs to serve not just as helpers but as companions in the truest sense, sharing in human experiences in a way that goes beyond simple obedience or training, and instead reflects a genuine emotional partnership that has been shaped by thousands of years of shared life. Looking toward the future, the bond between humans and dogs continues to evolve as new technologies, new forms of communication, and new ways of living emerge. Yet even in a world filled with artificial intelligence and virtual connections, the presence of a dog remains uniquely grounding, offering something that cannot be replicated by machines: the warmth of a living being who chooses to be with you. This choice is at the heart of the story, because from the very beginning, dogs have chosen humans, just as humans have chosen dogs, and this mutual choice has created a relationship that is based not on necessity alone, but on affection, trust, and a shared desire to be together. As long as this choice continues to be made, the story will go on, unfolding in quiet homes, bustling cities, and open landscapes around the world, carried forward by every wagging tail, every gentle nuzzle, and every moment of shared silence between a person and their dog. And in this endless unfolding, we can see not just the history of dogs and humans, but a living example of how connection, compassion, and companionship can shape the course of life itself. The story carries on, stretching farther into the future while still echoing the distant past. And in this long and gentle chapter, we begin to see how the relationship between humans and dogs is not something that stands still, but something that continues to grow, change, and deepen as both species move through time together, shaped by new environments, new challenges, and new ways of living, yet always guided by the same quiet thread of trust that first brought them together so long ago. As modern cities grow larger and more crowded, dogs continue to adapt, just as they have always done, learning to navigate sidewalks, elevators, traffic sounds, and busy parks. And in these spaces they become small islands of calm for the humans who live among the noise and movement, offering a familiar presence that cuts through the chaos of urban life and brings people back to something simple and steady. In these cities, dogs become companions to people who might otherwise feel alone, living in small apartments or working long hours, and in this way dogs quietly fill emotional spaces that might otherwise remain empty, reminding their humans that they are seen, that they matter, and that someone is always waiting for them to come home, even if the world outside feels overwhelming or indifferent. At the same time, dogs continue to live in rural areas, on farms, in forests, and along coastlines, still performing many of the roles they have held for centuries, herding animals, guarding property, and helping people live in harmony with the land. And in these settings, the ancient partnership between humans and dogs remains clearly visible, as both species work side by side, responding to weather, seasons, and the rhythms of the natural world. This ability of dogs to thrive in both modern cities and ancient landscapes is a testament to their extraordinary adaptability, an adaptability that has been shaped by their long history with humans, because to be a dog is to be flexible, to be attentive, and to be ready to fit into whatever world their humans create, whether that world is filled with concrete and steel or with grass and open sky. As science continues to explore the genetic and behavioral foundations of this adaptability, researchers have found that dogs possess a unique combination of traits that make them especially suited to life with humans, including a strong desire for social connection, an ability to learn from observation, and a remarkable sensitivity to human emotions. And these traits together create an animal that is not just domesticated, but deeply integrated into human social life. This integration is evident in the way dogs respond to human faces, voices, and even subtle shifts in mood, often acting as if they are quietly monitoring the emotional climate of their environment, adjusting their behavior in ways that bring comfort or excitement as needed. And in doing so, dogs become emotional anchors, helping to stabilize the people around them. As mental health becomes an increasingly important topic in the modern world, the role of dogs as emotional support and therapy animals continues to grow, with more people discovering that the simple presence of a dog can ease anxiety, lift depression, and provide a sense of connection that is difficult to find elsewhere. And in this way, the ancient bond between dogs and humans finds new relevance in a time when many people feel disconnected or overwhelmed. These therapeutic roles are not just about training or technique. They are about the natural empathy that dogs bring to their interactions with humans, an empathy that has been shaped by generations of living alongside people, learning to read their feelings and respond with warmth and attentiveness. And this emotional intelligence allows dogs to meet humans in moments of vulnerability with a gentleness that feels almost instinctive. Looking ahead, the future of the human-dog relationship will likely continue to evolve as new technologies, lifestyles, and cultural shifts reshape the way people live. Yet it is hard to imagine a future in which dogs do not still have a place beside humans, because their presence fulfills something deep and timeless in the human psyche, something that no machine or digital connection can replace. Whether dogs continue to serve as working partners, emotional companions, or simply beloved members of the family, their role will always be rooted in the same ancient exchange: humans offering care and protection, and dogs offering loyalty, understanding, and love, a balance that has sustained this relationship for tens of thousands of years. And so, as the story continues to unfold, it remains guided by that original choice made by a wolf and a human long ago, a choice to trust, to stay, and to share a life together. And in every modern dog and every human who loves one, that choice is made again and again, quietly, gently, and with enduring devotion. In a future where more people may live in virtual spaces, work remotely, and interact through screens, dogs will continue to require physical care, real presence, and genuine attention. And in meeting these needs, humans will be reminded day after day that life is not just something that happens in the mind or on a screen, but something that is felt through touch, movement, and shared space. And this reminder may become one of the most valuable gifts dogs offer in the years to come. As urban environments become more dense and more automated, dogs will continue to carve out small islands of nature within human lives, because every walk becomes a chance to feel the air, to notice the weather, and to observe the living world. And every interaction with a dog becomes a moment of connection that cuts through the noise of modern life and brings people back to something simple and grounding. This grounding effect is not accidental. It is rooted in the long evolutionary history that has shaped dogs to be sensitive to human needs, responsive to human emotions, and deeply motivated by social connection. And in this way, dogs are uniquely suited to serve as companions in a world that often feels disconnected and overwhelming. As we look at the future of canine genetics and breeding, new technologies may allow humans to better understand and preserve the health and well-being of dogs, reducing genetic diseases and improving quality of life. And in doing so, people will continue the long tradition of shaping dogs not just for utility, but for companionship, ensuring that the animals who share our lives are able to live long, comfortable, and happy lives. At the same time, ethical considerations about how dogs are bred, trained, and treated will become increasingly important, as humans recognize more fully the emotional and cognitive complexity of these animals, understanding that dogs are not simply property or tools, but sentient beings with their own experiences, needs, and feelings. And this recognition will likely lead to deeper respect and care for dogs in all parts of the world. In this evolving relationship, dogs may also play a role in helping humans navigate social and emotional challenges, serving as bridges between people, because dogs often bring strangers together in parks, on sidewalks, and in communities, creating moments of connection that might not otherwise occur. And in this way, dogs quietly continue to weave threads of social cohesion through human societies. As children grow up with dogs in their homes, they learn empathy, responsibility, and compassion, lessons that shape the kind of adults they become. And this influence will continue to ripple outward, affecting not just individual families but entire cultures, as each generation carries forward the values learned through caring for and loving dogs. Looking far ahead, it is easy to imagine a world that looks very different from today, yet still includes dogs walking beside humans, because the qualities that make dogs such good companions, loyalty, adaptability, emotional sensitivity, and a desire for connection, are qualities that will always be valued no matter how much the world changes. The story has traveled a long, quiet road, from the edge of ancient fires to the glow of modern homes, from the soft footfalls of wolves on frozen earth to the gentle padding of dogs across living room floors. And now it slowly comes to rest in the present moment, where humans and dogs still live side by side, just as they always have, bound by a connection that has outlasted every change the world has ever known. Today, when a dog lies beside a person on a couch, when it waits patiently by a door, when it lifts its eyes to meet a familiar face, it is continuing something that began tens of thousands of years ago. Every wagging tail carries the memory of a wolf that once chose warmth over wilderness. Every soft nuzzle carries the echo of a first moment of trust. Every quiet night shared between a human and a dog is a living piece of history. We often think of history as something written in books or carved in stone, but the truest history of dogs and humans is written in everyday life. It is written in muddy footprints by the door, in fur on clothing, in leashes hanging by walls, and in the gentle sounds of breathing shared in the dark. It is written in the way a dog knows when you are sad, and in the way a human smiles when a familiar shape greets them at the end of a long day. Across the world, in every culture and every climate, this same story is being lived out in millions of homes. A child growing up with a dog learns kindness. An elderly person finds comfort in quiet companionship. A family feels safer and warmer because a loyal friend is there. These moments may seem small, but together they form one of the greatest partnerships nature has ever created. From hunters to farmers, from explorers to city dwellers, dogs have walked beside us through every chapter of our journey. They have pulled our sleds, guarded our homes, helped raise our young, and sat with us in our loneliness. They have been our eyes in the dark, our ears in the silence, and our hearts in moments when we needed something steady to hold on to. And through it all, they have never asked for much in return: a little food, a little warmth, a little love. That is the quiet miracle of the dog. Even as the world continues to change, even as technology reshapes how we live, the bond between humans and dogs remains beautifully simple. It is built on trust, it is built on presence, it is built on the choice made again and again to stay close. And so, as this long and gentle story comes to its end, remember that you are not just listening to history, you are living it. Every time you speak to a dog, every time you walk beside one, every time you share a quiet moment together, you are continuing a story that began long before any of us were born and will continue long after. If you enjoyed this journey through the history of dogs, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and leave a comment below telling us where you're watching from. We love reading your stories and seeing how far this community reaches around the world. Thank you for being here and for sharing this peaceful moment with us.